Hey guys, Judith with Four Corners from Jay. I'm trying to quickly get this out. I'm in between work and picking up the kids from school. I'm actually outside of work, so I have vehicles in the background coming and going, and hopefully that's the only little interruption we'll have. So Maccabees book 1, chapter 6. About that time, King Antiochus, traveling through the high countries, heard say that Elymaeus in the country of Persia was a city greatly renowned for riches, silver, and gold, and that there was in it a very rich temple wherein were coverings of gold and breastplates and shields, which Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian king, who reigned first among the Grecians, had left there. Wherefore he came and sought to take the city and to spoil it, but he was not able to, because they of the city, having had warning thereof, rose up against him in battle. So he fled and departed thence with great heaviness, and returned to Babylon. Moreover, there came one who brought him tidings into Persia, that the armies which were against the land of Judea were put to flight, and that Lysias, who went forth first with a great power, was driven away of the Jews, and that they were made strong by armor and power and store of spoils, which they had gotten of the armies, whom they had destroyed. Okay, to be honest, I have a hard time managing different characters in books in general. There's just names, and I read through them, and I'm a visual person, so I need faces and, you know, character traits and so on and so forth to help me follow along with the characters. So I'm gonna try to read cohesively, coherently, but because I have a hard time with following characters. Okay. So chapter 6, verse 7. Also that they had pulled down the abomination which he had set up on the altar of Jerusalem, and that they had compassed about the sanctuary with high walls as before, and his city Beth-Yeshua. Now when the king heard these words, he was astonished and sore moved, whereupon he laid him down upon his bed, and fell sick of grief, because it had not befallen him as he looked for. It sounds like a temper tantrum. Verse 9, and there he continued many days, for his grief was ever more and more, and he made an account that he should die. Wherefore he called for all his friends, and said unto them, the sleep is gone from my eyes, and my heart faileth for very care. And I thought of myself, into what tribulation am I come? How great a flood of misery is it, wherein now I am, for I was bountiful and beloved in my power. But now I remember the evils that I did at Jerusalem, and that I took all the vessels of gold and silver that were therein, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Judea without cause. Remorse, grief, hold on, what's it called? Guilt. That stuff, it can kill a person. Okay. 13. I perceived therefore that for this cause these troubles are upon me, and behold, I perish through great grief in a strange land. Then called he for Philip, one of his friends, who he made rule over all his realm. And he gave him the crown in his robe and his signet, to the end he should bring up his son Antiochus and nourish him for the kingdom. So King Antiochus died there in the 149th year. Now when Lysias knew that the king was dead, he set up Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up, being young, to reign in his stead, and his name he called Jupiter. It's spelled E-U-P-A-T-O-R, Jupiter. About this time, unless it's pronounced differently, I'm just letting you know, I'm not saying Jupiter, but anyway. About this time, they that were in the tower shut up the Israelites around about the sanctuary, and sought always their hurt and strengthening, and the strengthening of the heathen. Wherefore Judas, proposing to destroy them, called all the people together to besiege them. So they came together and besieged them in the 150th year, and he made mounts for shot against them, and other engines, Howbeit certain of them that were besieged got forth, unto whom some ungodly men of Israel joined themselves. And they went unto the king and said, How long will it be ere thou execute judgment and avenge our brethren? We have been willing to serve thy father, and to do as he would have us, and to obey his commandments, for which cause they of our nation besiege the tower, and are alienating us. Moreover, as many of us as they could light on the slough and spoil our inheritance. So this is where it's like a civil war. You always hear, maybe not you, but I've always heard that it was the Jews against the Hellenistic kingdoms. Well, some of the Israelites, Jews, Judeans, they kind of joined forces with the Hellenizers. So that was interesting for me to learn last year. Okay, I apologize with the interruptions. Verse 25, neither have they stretched out their hand against us only, but also against their borders. And behold, this day are they besieging the tower at Jerusalem to take it. The sanctuary also and Bethsur have been fortified. Wherefore, if thou dost not prevent them quickly, they will do greater things than these. Neither shalt thou be able to rule them. Now when the king heard this, he was angry, and gathered together all his friends, and the captains of his armies, and those they had charge of the horse. There came also unto him from other kingdoms, and from isles of the sea, bands of hired soldiers, so that the number of his army was 100,000 footmen, 20,000 horsemen, and 32 elephants exercised in battle. These went through Idumea and pitched against Bethsur, which they assaulted many days, making engines of war. But they of Bethsur came out and burned them with fire, and fought valiantly. Upon this, Judith removed from the tower, pitched up Bath Zacharias over against the king's camp. Then the king, rising very early, marched fiercely with his host toward Beth Zacharias, where his armies made them ready to battle, and sounded the trumpets. And at the end they might provoke the elephants to fight. They showed them the blood of grapes and mulberries. Moreover, they divided the beasts among the armies, and for every elephant they appointed 1,000 men, armed with coats of mail, and with helmets of brass on their heads. And besides this, for every beast were ordained 500 horsemen of the beast. These were ready at every occasion. Whatsoever the beast was, and whatsoever the beast went, they went also, neither departing they from them. And upon the beasts were there strong towers of wood, which covered every one of them, and were girt fast upon them with devices. There were also upon every one 32 strong men, which fought upon them, besides the Indian that ruled him. As for the remnant of the horsemen, they set them on this side and on that side, at the two parts of the host, giving them signs what to do, and being harnessed all over amidst the ranks. Now when the sun shone upon the shields of gold and brass, and the mountains glistened therewith, and shined like lamps of fire, so part of the king's army, being spread upon the high mountains, and part of the valleys below, they marched on safely and in order. Wherefore all that heard the noise of their multitude, and the marching of the company, and the rattling of the harnesses, were moved, for the army was very great and mighty. Then Judas and his hosts drew near, and entered into the battle, and there were slain of the king's army 600 men. Eleazar, also named Severan, perceived that one of the beasts, armed with royal harness, was higher than all the rest, and supposing the king was upon him, put himself in jeopardy, to the end that he might deliver his people, and get him a perpetual name. Wherefore he ran upon him courageously through the midst of the battle, slaying on the right hand and on the left, so that they were divided from him on both sides. Which done, he crept under the elephant, thrust him under, and slew him, whereupon the elephant fell down upon him, and there he died. Howbeit the rest of the Jews, seeing the strength of the king and the violence of his foes, turned away from them. The king's army went up to Jerusalem to meet them, and the king pitched his tents against Judea and against Mount Sion. But with them that were in Bethshura he made peace, for they came out of the city because they had no victuals there to endure the siege. So being a year of rest to the land, so the king took Bethshura, set a garrison there to keep it. As for the sanctuary, he besieged it many days, and set there artillery with engines and instruments to cast fire, and stones and pieces to cast darts and slings. Whereupon they also made engines against their engines, and held them battle a long season. Yet at the last their vessels became without victuals. For that was the 7th year, and they in Judea that were delivered from the Gentiles had eaten up the residue of the store. There were but a few left in the sanctuary, because the famine did so prevail against them, that they were fain to disperse themselves, every man to his own place. At that time Lysias heard say that Philip, whom Antiochus the king whilst he lived, had appointed to bring up his son Antiochus, that he might be king, was returned out of Persia and Media, and the king's host also that went with him, that he sought to take unto him the rulings of the affair. I'm gonna shift here. Wherefore he went in all haste and said to the kings and the captains of the host and the company, We decay daily, and our victuals are but small. On the place we lay siege unto is strong, and the affairs of the kingdom lie upon us. Now therefore let us be friends with these men, and make peace with them, and with all their nations, and covet with them, that they shall live under their laws, as they did before. For they are therefore displeased, and have done all these things, because we abolished their laws. So the kings and princes were content. Therefore he set upon them to make peace, and they accepted thereof. Also the king and the princes made an oath unto them, whereupon they went out of the stronghold. The king entered into Mount Sion, but when he saw the strength of the place, he broke his oath that he had made, and gave commandment to pull down the wall round about. Afterward departed he in all his haste. He returned into Antiochia, where he found Philip to be master of the city. So he fought against him and took the cities by force. It's the end. Maccabees, book 1, chapter 6.